Shay, and amen. And Ayi Bobo. So I want to thank the living one for being here. I just got back from Memphis, Tennessee, where I did two things on last weekend. I went there to celebrate the 50th high school class reunion of Northside class of 1971. Yes, almost 70 years old. And we were there thinking about when we were little moo-moos.
What?
For our 50th, yeah, our 50th year celebration was wonderful. See everybody.
Hey.
And also spending time with my parents, my father 90, my mother 88. I give thanks to them as living elders and living ancestors still on this side with us, and to spend time with my siblings as well. So I am literally from the highway to the pulpit, so to speak, on this particular day. And I'm so happy to do this. Also, bear in mind, and thank you, Baba Obata, for the prayers and for the libation and for the recognition, as we are all aware of others who are having difficulties at this time, including our own Pastor Queen Umi K and Mother Clara, as you mentioned, and their grief at the homegoing of, I'd say, Brother Deacon, because he was a fellow Mason as well, worshipful master, as a matter of fact, Burdette Griffin. As he's being elevated as an ancestor. I wanted to keep that in mind. This is a time of his elevation, transition as an ancestor. And with that, yeah, I share. It's very important. It's a very important time phase, especially during these 40 days. So I want to, since you said this earlier too, to also invite us to invoke the ancestors and to invoke our own Oris to be present in this moment. And so I'm going to do two invocations, one to the Egun, who are in our bones, our ancestors, with each of us individually and collectively. And then secondly, to our Ori, and I ask you to hold your head when I do that. But the first part to our ancestors, and I want you to really feel that your ancestors are not abstract, they're not far away. They're not only in the ground, but they're in your bones, in your body, in your DNA, in your muscle, in the tissue, the skin, that your ancestors are embodied here now. Egungun kiki egungun, praise to the medians of the ancestors. Egune ku ran ran feawo, ku opepe, ancestors who have preserved the mystery of featherless flight. Odan so bofun le wo, egune ku bata bongo egunde. You, the ancestors, create the words of reverence and power. The drums of the ancestors announce the arrival of the ancestors. Biaba fiatori na le egun ashede. On the strong mat, you spread your power. The ancestors are here. Ashe. And if everyone would just join with me in our African spirituality, this that is contained inside of our head is a sacred being that we get directly from Olodumare and from a whole room, the other dimension before we came here, and we chose our intention. And this being, this aspect of ourselves is more sacred than anything else or anyone else we could come in contact with, because it is to be our guide and our protector. Ori. Bele atete nirana tete jibe niko osa. Kos osa tida ni jibe le yin ori eni. Head, consciousness, I call you. You who always blesses your own. You who blesses a person before any other spirit. No spirit blesses a person without the permission of the head. Ashe.
Ashe.
And then we have one other aspect about traditional greetings. When we greet each other, we can say the words Iburu, Iboye, or Iboshe. With me, Iburu, Iboye, Iboshe. Again, Iburu,
Iburu,
Iboshe. Yes. We're peeling take my burden from the earth and offer it to heaven. Ashe.
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 Yes.
And let me also say, beloved, Ashe is more than in a way of speaking, more than simply saying amen. It not only means it is so, it means we make it so. We make it so. We make it so. O, and the O is a seal. To means we make it so through our words, for Ashe, and through our actions. So once again, I'm so blessed to be with you, and I want to work with this idea and this commitment to forgiveness. And the passage that was selected is from Luke chapter 6, verse 38. And you can see it on the screen now. And it says in the New Revised Standard Version, give, and it shall be given to you. a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be measured back to you or given back to you. And I know that many of us are probably familiar with this passage, especially as I grew up around offering time. When they would raise the offering in Homeland Church of God in Christ, this was one of the favorite biblical passages that would be read and even put in song. Give and to be given to you, good men. We all know about heart, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall be poured into your bosom or laps. But the same measure that you gave, it'll be given back to you. And this is true. At the same time, it's not the whole story. And it's not the whole implication of what this verse means, because the verse and idea that Yeshua is communicating in this particular part of the Gospel of Luke begins with the verse before it. And I want you to listen to the verse that comes before this one, because this verse that comes before this one is also directly related to the idea of forgiveness. So hear these words. Kaibe krenete. Do not judge or do not be critical. Kai ume kritete. And, or in order that you should not be judged or criticized. Kaime katadid gazete. And do not condemn. Kai ume katadid kasete. So that you should not be condemned. Apoluete. Let it go. Kai apolu te seste, and you shall be let go. I need you to hear that. Not just forgive, it says, let it go, and you shall be let go. Then just the first part of the verse 38. Didote, give. Kai dote sestai, who mean, and it shall be given to you. So again, do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Let it go, and you will be let go. Then give, and it shall be given to you. You hear the difference in how that sounds? That the precursor to giving is letting go. That the precursor to giving is not condemning. That the precursor to giving is not judging. Now, what's the context of this? Yeshua, of course, spoke these words. And the context in which he spoke these words, according to the writer of the Gospel of Luke, is in some ways parallel to the Gospel of Matthew. I want us to remember that Yeshua and his brothers and sisters and the Pharisees and the scribes and others, the crowds and the multitude, were in a condition of occupation. They lived in Judea at a time when the Roman Empire occupied that part of the world in which they lived. It was a world in which they faced the brutalities and the uncertainties of life under the Romans. The world in which they lived was a client state of the Romans, which means they had to pay taxes and tribute to the Romans, especially as Judeans, since they refused to worship Jupiter Maximus, Optimus. Since they refused to worship their primary deity, who represented the economic, political, social power of the Roman Empire, and whose son, quote unquote, the emperor was, who himself, that is the emperor, was considered to be a son of the deity. So in Judea at that time, beloved, they were an oppressed people. And Yeshua appears not as the kind of pious person that we often are told he was, but as the revolutionary that he was, as the seditionist that he was, as the outlaw that he was. When we read the entirety, for example, of chapter 6 of this gospel, it begins with him breaking the law, according to the interpretation of some, of the Torah by eating along, or rather his disciples eating on the Sabbath. And then he himself on another Sabbath, healing a man whose hand was withered. He was breaking the law. He was breaking the prescriptions. He was breaking the economic structure that existed at that time, both by Rome and by Judean leaders. And when he broke the law, they thought about how they were going to have to deal with him. He had to be dealt with because he went against the established protocol for supporting both the structure within Judea, social, political, and economic, and status quo, and insulting the Roman Empire. Because once again, the peace of Rome was secured by compliance to the emperor in the empire. He goes on and it goes from bad to worse because he continues also to do healings. Now, we celebrate these healings of Jesus. It's such a wonderful thing. He healed the sick, he raised the dead. It was a horrible thing because once again, the economy depended on people coming to the priest. The economy depended on people fulfilling certain prescriptions that were in place. And Yeshua jeopardized that protocol. And he jeopardized it not just individually, but he jeopardized it because he was telling others to do the same thing. Well, here again, beloved, when we think about the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain, we have been conditioned to think this is a pious conversation about parables and about alternative ways of living and existing. But no, these are revolutionary words that he's telling the people, his disciples, the 12 that he had chosen, yes, but then the entire multitude of people who were present. Do these things that are contrary to the protocol. He was a dangerous man. And so again, we read the words that come up in this chapter about loving your enemy, about turning the other cheek, about giving your outer and inner garment if someone wants them. We need to bear in mind that this is just not a universal protocol he's given them, but rather he's telling them how they must survive in the reality of being occupied and dominated. He's trying to give them instructions for how to survive in the midst of oppression. Because Yeshua has other things to say in other situations. But in this context, because he loves the people and because he's a pragmatist, he tells them to do these things of forgiving, of giving what you have and more, of turning the other cheek, because he's concerned about their well-being and concerned about the well-being of the nation. I need you to hear that. He is not a savior in this context for the powers that be. He's the opposite. He's a threat. And he's not completely recognized yet, even by the multitude. What Yeshua is teaching the people also is the application of the law of cause and effect. When we get to the verse just before 38, I wanted to read that because I want us to hear that he's telling them not to be oppressive and judgmental with each other. Did you hear what I just said? He's teaching them specifically, do not be oppressive and judgmental with each other in community. Because he's speaking to the community, not to individuals as such, but to the body as a whole. Because he wants them to begin to shape and form themselves in a counter-Roman context, a counter-empire context, and even an anti-empire context. Now, if you hear it that way, you can also begin to understand he's telling the people how they should interact first and foremost as brothers and sisters with each other. And if they'll do that with each other, then the implications of that are revolutionary in the broader culture. Turn the other cheek with each other. Go the extra mile with each other. Take the outer garment off with each other. Treat everyone as your brother and sister in the community. Don't judge. Don't condemn. And when you have your differences, let it go. That word that I read in Greek means to loose. Don't hold on to it, let it go. If you let it go, it'll let go of you. This is the key, beloved. It's not just that the deity, our Father, here's another point. Yeshua never, ever really calls the living one by the holy name. And more often than not, he says, our Father, the Father of the poor, the Father of the oppressed, the Father of the ostracized, the Father of those who don't have their fathers, including himself, because his natural father wasn't around either. He says, as the children of the Father, as the children of our Father, as siblings, don't judge, don't condemn, and then let it go. In what we call the Lord's Prayer wrongly, it's not the Lord's Prayer in Matthew, it is the Our Father, Pater Hemon. Yeshua says these words in another way. He says, forgive us, we read this way in English, forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. But what he really says is, send away from us our indebtedness as we send away those who are indebted to us. It's reciprocity. At the same time, by our own intention, as we let go of those things that we think others owe us, we also open ourselves up to receive a greater blessing. Now, on this particular verse, I want you to pay attention to something else. Because again, we love this verse. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, overflowing. It doesn't say in the Greek, shall man, it just says they will put into your lap, not bosom, into your lap. That's saying that whatever you give, I need you to hear this. It's saying that whatever you give, whatever you do, whatever you dispense, and in whatever form it is dispensed, it will be given back to you, multiplied. Can you hear? It's not just the good, but it's also the bad if you choose bad. let it go, but give. And here's where the choice comes in. You have to choose to give what is good in order for what is good to return. But whatever we plant, whatever we sow, we also reap. And this is why forgiveness involves and engages not just our actions, but our inner thoughts about what we're doing, our intention in what we're doing. So Yeshua is charging them to be clear in their intention in how they give, how they plant, how they sow their thoughts, their words, and their deeds, because it is a law that it will multiply. It is a law that it will come back. It is a law that will be placed in our laps. And so he is encouraging them to do the best in giving. But he's also saying to them in the midst of this, because he goes on to talk about this later on in the same chapter, he's saying in the midst of this, whatever you give, be conscious of what you're doing. Now let's take that positive spin. Another way in which he's saying is that before you give anything, forgive. Before you make an offering, and he says this elsewhere, go back and correct what's wrong with your brother or sister.
Ashe. Ashe.
You make it straight. Don't wait on anybody else. Don't wait on the deity.
That's right.
You know what you're
That's right.
owing. You go back and make it straight.
Yes.
You go back and let it go.
Yes.
As you let it go, it lets go of you.
Yes.
You know how it goes. You worry, you obsess over something, you can't get over it, and therefore it becomes a life unto itself, and it won't let you go. So you got to let it go and release it, exercise it, and discharge it. Then, after you're no longer judging, after you're no longer condemning, then you give. And the next thing you should do is sit down. Hear what I said? Sit down. When you have done that, sit down. This is a law, beloved. Again, after you've done those first three things, then give.
Ashe.
The best of who you are, because what we give is our best thoughts. Every gift is an expression of what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
Ashe.
So when you give freely, and you give after you have released, there we go. When you give after you have unbound yourself from what you've been holding on to.
Ooh, so good.
What did I just say? When you unbind when you loose yourself, in every exorcism Yeshua has performed, it always involved the collaboration and the cooperation of the person who was set free. When your Ori and your Imi, your Igbe in you let go, then you unbind yourself.
Yes.
Once you be made whole, make yourself whole. Then give. And then sit down. I mean, take a good seat too.
Yes, go sit down.
And know with confidence that what you have given in power, what you have given in pure mind and thoughts, what you have given, what you have sown, is going to cultivate itself in the laws of the universe. And karma, remember, karma is not bad. Karma is just cause and effect.
Ooh.
You want to change bad karma, then do good karma equal to or greater than the bad karma you knew you did.
Yes.
You're a spiritual philanthropist. I repeat, then you sit down. And it and they, the principle and forces and intelligences of life in the universe that are established, they'll give it back to you. Now it comes back. Good measure. Pressed together. Shaken down. And shaken up. And overflowing. Will it be poured into your lap? Not your bosom, your lap.
Ashe.
into your lap. It'll be poured. And then he sums up by saying the same thing I said earlier. The same measure, the same way, the same form, the same thought, the same word, the same intelligence, the same energy that you put that out there in, that's how it's going to come back. Multiply. Multiply. Beloved, that's revolutionary.
Ashe.
That's revolutionary to know that whatever it is you've been holding on to in the communal context, see, that's the other thing. He's not talking to individuals. He's talking to a whole crowd. Let me emphasize that too. It's y'all, he says. Y'all stop judging. Y'all stop criticizing each other. Oh, Lord, let me hold up. Y'all stop judging each other. Y'all stop criticizing each other. Y'all let each other go. Ooh, you hear that? You hear that? It's not just individual, but y'all. And then y'all give. It's all plural. Y'all give. And then y'all sit down.
Ashe.
And then it's going to come back to y'all. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing shall it be poured into y'all's lap. The same way you gave it. Multiplied is the same way it's going to come back again, multiplied and abundant. So I want to stop this meditation right here. Yes. Give, and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. But before we give, let us remember, stop judging. Stop judging yourself and stop judging each other. Stop condemning. Stop condemning yourself. Stop condemning others. Let it go. Let others go to be themselves, and therefore unbind yourself to be yourself. Oh, Lord. And I mean living one on that. Unbind yourself to be yourself. And those three things of themselves are forms of giving and forgiving, being and doing. Then, just like Baba Black is doing, sit back and relax. I like that posture, brother. Sit back with confidence that you and that we and that us and that y'all will receive good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. And let me end with these words, beloved. Do not expect anything less than that. Do not settle for anything less than that. When you know you've done the other three steps. The final one is faux show.
Ashe.
Absolutely. And so it is. Ashe, 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 amen, amen,
Ashe.
amen.
Ashe,
Bobo,
Ashe,
Ashe.
Dr. Coleman, that was
Bobo.
awesome. That was awesome, Dr.
Amen.
Coleman.
Good.
Ibo She.
Ashe.
We take our burdens from the earth,
Mm-hmm.
lift them up to the heavens.
Mm.
And so it is, because we now are free
Yes.
to be loosed and free to give and free and absolutely confident to receive.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
And so it is. Ashe.
Yes,
Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe, oh,
Odupe,
Ashe.
thank you so much.
Amen and
Ashe.
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 Ashe.